a therapist in private practice in Fairfax, Virginia, and we've also been working for many years with the program. We developed a program called the ADHD College Success Guidance Program, and from that, I put together a book that was published last year. And so some of what I'm going to share with you tonight is from the from our workshops. We're sort of similar in Summit Camp in that we do have basically a 3-day, like a weekend workshop where we have people come out, and young people between the ages of 18 and 25 typically. And we do a residential intensive experiential nature-based 3-day workshop where we convey some concepts to people that some of which I want to talk to you about tonight. And so let's see. Now I'm trying to get all this technology down. I didn't share the screen yet. Okay, here we go. And if somebody else joining, I'll try to keep an eye out for others joining. Okay, so all that said, wanted to, you already got the title of this, so want to talk to you about a concept called surge capacity depletion. And of course, our focus is on people with ADHD. And in that group, there's so much crossover. I have ADHD myself, and I also have a learning disability in a specific area like mathematics, for example. And and part of the way the ADHD shows up, sometimes I'm like noticing too many things at one time, and so now, see, I'm admitting people, and I'm watching this indicator up here to see when people come on, and I'm also trying to, oh, here comes somebody else, and also trying to focus on the next slide in this show. So so bear with me, and we'll get it all together here. So let me see. Let's go to the first slide. So what we try to do in our workshop and in the book is to create a common language, and by that I mean so the nature of ADHD and the cluster of other sort of conditions that go with ADHD, like learning disability or on the spectrum kinds of issues. It's a very subjective experience. It's hard to find the words to explain what's going on. Like when I was in school, I remember being asked a whole lot of questions like, well, why are you late to class? Where's your homework? And why aren't you paying attention? And I had this perfect answer, which was honest. The answer is, I don't know. And I really, I didn't have the words for it. Because again, it's a subjective experience. Now I could say, well, I have this issue going on where I need a little bit more stimulation in my environment in order to sustain my focus. And when I drop below that threshold, it's real hard for me to stay engaged. Well, I didn't have anything like that in my vernacular, my vocabulary at that point, and certainly didn't know that's what was going on. So what we're doing in our work is helping people develop a common language so that we can explain what's going on. We can hear and understand the kind of tools and accommodations and skill sets that will help us accommodate for ADHD. And in the way that can only be done when we understand what's being said and what we're hearing and our experience and how they can all correlate into the same meaning or similar meaning. So that's what I'm doing tonight in terms of what's going on with this energy thing and people's energy dropping and their mood states. And so I want to come up with a common language that explains that. So something happened in our world, and that's all I'm going to say. that says it. We had a pandemic occur, and it's affecting people in all sorts of ways, and we're suffering in all sorts of different ways. Someone once said, "Yeah, we're all in we're all in the same boat on this." And a way of thinking is, no, we're not in the same boat. We're in the same storm. Some of us are in big yachts, and some of us are in little rowboats, and some are in bathtubs. It is the same. It is the same storm, but we're all affected differently. And my thinking and what I've experienced as a person with ADHD, as a person who works with people who have ADHD, is that there's a unique way in which people who have ADHD are affected that's different, and maybe in some ways has a higher impact than for others. And I want to just build in some words for the languaging that helps to explain what I mean, and most importantly, what we can do about it. Some of what we're seeing in how this is showing up, there's the online school thing is a considerable challenge. And some people are just having initially had a great time. Like, one young man told me, "Oh yeah, I can just stay in bed in my pajamas and go to school. It's pretty cool." And then a few months later, he's like he's very stressed. By the end of the day, he's saying, "I do this all day long. I'm sitting here watching the screen for an hour and 15 minutes at a time with a short break in between, a short lunch break, which I see nobody. All I see is this screen, and then I'm doing homework." And it got to the one point where by the end of the day, by the last his last period class, he's crying. He said, "I'm crying in just frustration." In college, we've had this over the last semester. The break, we had people coming home that had pushed and kind of got through to almost to like Thanksgiving maybe, or toward the end of the semester, and then burnout, just broke down and had trouble completing, and just sort of came apart and didn't feel like they did their best work, and it wasn't the results didn't reflect their best effort, and going away to college and seeking the college experience, which is social and interactive and new ideas and new people. Well, that didn't happen for a vast majority of college students. And so they've come back home, or they reported before they came back home being isolated and alone, and they're coming back depressed and stressed out. Now students are heading back out for more of the same. And so that's just some of the ways it's manifesting. As parents of students who have ADHD, that's a whole different story. That's a whole different set of stresses, and accommodating a schedule where you have kids at home who are learning, for those of you who do, and working at home yourself. It's unimaginable, and the levels of stress in some cases. So what I want to talk to you about tonight is this concept of surge capacity depletion and how it's showing up in life. And in the what to do about it, I want to come up with strategies that limit this depletion, and then approaching ways of new and better ways of restoring ourselves. So in the course of this, we're going to have some ideas that I'll present to you, but most importantly, I'm wanting you to understand these concepts and again, to have words to put to them, that in that expanded understanding of yourself and what's going on around you, you will be able to come up with some of these ways of monitoring and managing yourself, and also restoring. So just one of the words that I want to throw out is anti-fragile. There's a way of thinking is that when we experience crisis or in any kind of a situation, we can rise to it. People rise to it in ways that are either fragile, resilient, or anti-fragile. And just sort of a way of thinking about it is fragile is kind of like a candle in the wind. The wind blows and the candle goes out. Resilient is sort of like it's like a campfire lantern. The wind blows, nothing happens, it still burns. Um, a campfire is an example of anti-fragile. The wind blows and the fire burns brighter. So some people in a crisis, they rise to the stimulation and they grow. They're anti-fragile. Some people they just hunker down and they survive and they're resilient. And others are fragile. And the thing is, we need to be all three of these at different times. There's times that we need to have the vulnerability of the fragility that, yeah, this is hard, this is difficult, and to touch the emotion about it. And we need to hunker down and kind of think about this is our hero's journey. Staying home and doing our day-to-day life is a very important and sometimes best thing we can do, while others of us, and at times all of us can rise and grow in this situation. I love this example. If those of you who saw Shaun of the Dead, it's a zombie movie. It's a good example of resilient and fragile, anti-fragile. His buddy, the guy on the left here, Shaun's buddy, at the beginning of the movie, all he does all day long is sits around and plays computer games, and kind of Shaun's sort of like that too, and he has a job. He sort of plods along, and then by the end of the show, of course, his buddy becomes a zombie, so he just chains him up in the shed, and he's still playing computer games like he did at the beginning. Shaun, however, has risen to the occasion and developed leadership skills and some creative ways of being in life, and so it's sort of changed and grown him. So again, these ways of being are important to understand. I want to kind of differentiate between when it's important to be fragile, resilient, or anti-fragile, and how to do it. So I'll just share some personal kind of stuff about this. At the beginning of the pandemic, I remember telling friends of mine, colleagues, something really like naive, like, yeah, I was born for times like this, and I was surging, as we say. I got it, you know, my caseload was just like over the top, and I didn't want to say no to people, so I said, yeah, I'll just you know, see 40 people this week, and when 20 to 24 is all we really need to be seeing in a private practice. And but I figured, well, it's just for a week or so, but it kept on. It stayed that way. And I had other projects. I thought, well, I can't do the things I used to do, so I put in a garden. I built out an office in a shed. I built a fence. Went through a coaching program for certification. I can't remember all the things I did. I was up to all kind of stuff, and then volunteering to be present to first responders. And I was really doing well, and for a long time, and well, a couple of months, 3 months, and then something happened. It all stopped. I started noticing waking up in the middle of the, you know, like 3 a.m, and feeling sort of not well. Just my mood was depressed, and I didn't feel hopeful. Nothing seemed enjoyable. That the things I used to do, that even things I could continue to do, that, you know, in the pandemic, things out in the, you know, like a retreat center out in the country, and all the fun things out there, I just couldn't get into. So I started. I went checked in with another therapist. Started spending time tuning into what was going on. I said, you know, it's really weird. It's like depression, but it's not. It's more. It's kind of like burnout, and well, something in between maybe. And then, you know, in the depths of this, you know, trying to understand what is this new experience I'm having that's just very not so pleasant. I came across an article called, and it talked about something called surge capacity depletion. And what I understand, my understanding of this is that our surge capacity, you see by the definition here, it's sort of like our reserve system that for energy, for our resources, our personal resources. And when in times of crisis, we'll surge, we'll press forward above and beyond what we typically do in our day-to-day lives, and we'll tap into this capacity, this reserve that we have. Now, that's like the sort of thing that happens that with in crises like natural disasters, hurricanes. I'm thinking there's this group called the Cajun Navy down. I'm from the South, from Texas area, in Texas, Louisiana. Around time of hurricanes, the Cajun Navy is this loosely affiliated group of volunteers that go out in whatever boat they can find and rescue people in a hurricane situation. And they'll do this for hours and days on end, sometime up to a week. And then it's over, and they go home and they rest and recover. And it's sort of something that happens seasonally for them in some ways. But a way of thinking, a crisis like that like any crisis, has a beginning, middle, and an end. And for them, the beginning and all the way through to the end is about a week long. And so it'll knock them down, but there's an end in sight when they can come back to a normal life and begin to restore themselves. So what's happened for us is that we had, for months, since last March, or as early as February for some, we were at the beginning of this crisis, looking at and wondering where's the middle. And we were there for months and months and months until we first started coming out with the hopeful first signs of an efficient vaccine. We were stuck in between the beginning and the middle, and that is a very, very long time to surge. And to surge in this anti-fragile way, or even just to be resilient, it tapped the resources of us in an extraordinary way. And and when it came time to restore, because of the pandemic, because of quarantine, because of shutdown, we were not able to do many of the means of restoring, the approaches to restoring our energies that we had right at our fingertips before. So it's kind of a dual. Surge capacity depletion is a dual sort of a problem. It's like, we're surging and burning energy over a long period of time with an unknown end, and we're depleted, and we remain depleted because we can't do the restoring in the same way that we've that all the avenues of restoring, or most of them, seem closed to us. So understanding now that what surge capacity depletion is about, add ADHD to the mix. Well, people with ADHD are more likely to surge and deplete our resources. And one of the main reasons, because this novelty and stimulation that we seek in our day-to-day life, that helps us stay focused, that keeps us energized, that sort of helps us stay motivated in all sorts of ways, we're drawn like that, like moth-like, to this flame of energetic kinds of activities. So we're more likely to surge and deplete. And then the same novelty and stimulation required for restoring, it's limited, if at all. if it's available at all. So we're stuck in two ways. Both, again, the double-edged sword is even sharper for those of us with ADHD. So if you're wondering about now, well, what do we do with that? That's a good question to ask. So, and in answering that, let me let me tell you what not to do. I remember someone, some self-styled guru. I can't remember who it was. Oh yeah, self-styled guru. I'll put their name there. Said something like, if you're not completing some sort of a major project, learning a language, or doing some major transformative experience in life, you're a real loser. And I thought, well, not only is that harsh, but that's pretty damaging and also absurd. And my reply to that is, well, we don't have the luxury of thinking that way now, because all that kind of critical diatribe does is just to make people feel worse, guilty, or even further knocked down. A way of thinking about any goal we have or any problem we need to solve is that we need method, motive, opportunity. There's three buckets I've used to kind of sort, and this is part of what we do in our training. First of all, method. You need to know. And by the way, I stole this from a murder mystery novel. This isn't original. This is how they determine who forensically who commits a crime. So method is, do you know how to do it? All the skill sets and the how to do it. So, to do anything or to solve a problem. Secondly, motive. Do you have the motivation to begin and carry through this project or solution? How do you get yourself to do something, especially when it's hard? And then opportunity. Do you have all the elements required, the elements of time and space and tools? So a way of thinking about the pandemic is, yeah, for some of us, it provided us the opportunity of a bunch of time with and an opportunity to focus. And for some people, that opportunity, that time was stressing about a job or family or finances. So it's a partial opportunity. There's no motive when all the energy is going to other issues, just trying to balance life. It's hard to focus on the motivational part of that. So another way of thinking, is that intentionally, as I've said here, intentionally and sustained action, resiliency and anti-fragility, and fragility at times when we need that will help us to understand the method, motive, and opportunity needed to sustain us in our efforts of rising to the occasion in a way that it promotes growth and accomplishment without knocking us down in the depletion of surge capacity. So counter to what this self-styled guru said, I love Brene Brown's work. She, if you haven't, I think we may have this as a resource link at the end of this. She did a TED talk on vulnerability, the importance of being vulnerable and open about what's going on with us in the right settings, in the right place and time, that leads to taking care of ourselves emotionally. It takes courage to say yes to play and rest in a culture where exhaustion is seen as a status symbol. I read somewhere that Elon Musk said he works 120 hours a week. I was doing the math on that. I have a learning disability, as I mentioned, so I may have gotten it wrong, but I don't think there's enough hours in the day to do that kind of work and to sleep and eat and spend time with family and all the other things that are important to our way of being. So one of the So in answer to the question, what to do, the first and most important thing is that understanding, naming what's going on is liberating. Um, when we can say, yeah, this is surge capacity depletion. This is what it means. This is, for me, that moment of that aha moment was when I was thinking, God, it feels like depression, but it's something different. And it's like what we call burnout back in the 70s or 80s. But it's not that either. And then when this came along, it's like, whoa, that's what's happening. That's exactly what's happening. So naming it, understanding what's going on is liberating. Secondly, learn how to monitor and manage these personal resources and states of being, energy, our energy levels, monitoring, understanding our stress, and also our emotion. And third, to vigorously discover and pursue new ways of restoring. We think method, motive, opportunity here, this is about learning new methods, because as we understand and have the liberation of understanding what's going on with us, and we get out of the self-blaming sort of rhetoric and our thinking, it opens us up to new motivations and new opportunities to pursue new ways of restoring. So I don't know. I don't recall a time in my life where I sat down and said, wow, what's my energy level? Let me quantify that. And where is it going? And what kind of reserve do I have? And um, am I restoring or depleting? Um, the well, I never had to, I guess. But certainly now it's not an optional thing. One of the thoughts that came to mind as I started thinking about this is, in computer games we have these like life bars or energy bars where you can look up in the right hand corner at any point in time and tell exactly how much you've got left. So if you think about this, um, uh, bringing something like this to quantify, to think about, to just be aware of your energy level, it is a good way to do the first step of what is my energy level, and beginning to understand some more of what might be tapping it. One of the things that drain us, our energy, just besides the day-to-day exertion toward whatever we do for work and our activities of daily living, stress, which is defined as a sort of a drain that is based upon how we bring ourselves to the stimuli outside of us. In other words, what might be stressful for me is not stressful for someone else, based on my, what the things I like, the things I'm good at, the ways that I've habits that I've developed. So everyone's a bit different. That again is what makes it subjective. So a way of thinking about it, and another sort of words to use on this is, think about your stress as a stress wagon. Here's another analogy, like the life bar for energy. If you imagine you're pulling a wagon and you're facing away from the wagon, you're not aware of what's going on in that wagon. As stuff is quietly placed in there, or things have been there for a long time and covered up. It's really hard to at times to know what your stress level is until it becomes so heavy it exceeds your capacity, and at that point the wagon becomes hard to pull. So using the stress wagon analogy, it's like if you're pulling, sometimes when people pull the wagon, they get to a point they can't pull anymore, and some people will keep pulling anyway, thinking they're getting somewhere, and it just sort of wears them out and they drop. Or some people may turn around and for the first time realize all that's in the wagon, and they see oh, this is just too much. I can't deal with it. And they just kind of sit down and give up. Others maybe get angry and dump it out. And a creative way of thinking about this is that the more you can visualize and imagine and quantify again what you're pulling and name it, that gives you the opportunity to decide what you want to do with it, what's important to have in the wagon, and maybe what's not important to have, or even what's the toll that it's taken on you, or maybe how you can rearrange things in the wagon. One of the exercises we do in our workshop has to do with plastic, steel, and crystal. And this is a little exercise where we toss objects around the room and in the same pattern again and again. We start off with plastic, and then when someone drops the cup and tossing it around, we say, okay, think about this. This just fell. You dropped the plastic in your life. Some things in life are plastic. They're important enough that you're carrying them, or doing them. But they're the least important of those things. And people can usually rapidly name some things that are plastic in their life. College students are going to be quick to say, yeah, it's things like computer games or some aspects of socialization, excessive socialization. So then we start back up as everyone kind of has this way to get opportunity to name what's plastic. And we add to the mix this steel cup that begins going around along with the plastic cup. And eventually the steel cup drops. And we talk about, well, what's steel in your lives? It's more important than plastic. It may be stuff like working out, which is very, very important, but maybe not the most important. And then, well, what I used to do is I'd tell people, I'd pull out this wine glass and say, well, this is my great aunt's Waterford crystal. Be real careful with it. And I'll throw it casually out to the group. And it's sort of like there's this palpable hush that falls over the group, and people are like real careful. They don't want to throw it. They want to hand it to each other, and they throw it very cautiously. And part of that is I said, well, no, you need to toss it because we risk everything in life. And all we can do is bring caution to it. So at some point, the glass falls and breaks, or I'd knock it down or something like that. And just to get the full impact of it, because at that point, when they see it broken on the floor, and when they first grab it, when it's tossed to them, that feeling, I said, that's the feeling that goes with crystal. These are the crystal things in your life. What are those things that are crystal? And I don't do the broken glass thing anymore. It's too hard to vacuum. And people call me out on telling them it's my great aunt's crystal, because they know I just buy it for like 50 cents in a thrift store. But the thing is, what we put in our wagon, to begin to think about, okay, what's crystal, steel, plastic? How am I portioning what's in the wagon in ways that can help me to manage the stress better through conscious choice? So let's say that, yeah, imagine all of the different objects that you have in the wagon are about all you can carry, and then suddenly you have this big, what we call a cauldron. I'll define later on. You have this huge cauldron of unexpressed emotion that's now part and parcel of your stress wagon as well. And oftentimes it may be about emotion, about what you have in the wagon, that in this case becomes the sort of the final the final object that can be carried, and people wind up the wagon dumping over as a result of it. So way of thinking about the stress wagon and what to do is that you can develop a daily habit of inventorying your wagon. This holds true for your energy as well. Organize your wagon according to crystal, steel, and plastic priorities, and realize that your feelings about what's in your wagon, if not managed, could be another additional and significant stressor. So I want to look at what makes emotions a stressor. And to understand that, here's some more of the language we like to use. Way of thinking, there's thousands of feeling words, but if you could put them all under these 5 major headings here: glad, sad, mad, afraid, ashamed. Any emotion you could come up with would go under at least one, maybe 2 of them. Like excited would be under glad. It's a mixture of glad and afraid. Guilt is like ashamed. So being able, again, remembering when you name it, that's liberating. Just being able to call it out, to put into expression a feeling, is has the power of calming that and helping make that feeling more manageable. And it lets us know what we're experiencing. A way of thinking is that we don't just have a feeling. We can have and often do have all 5 feelings going on at one time. So a way of understanding these feelings is again quantified on the scale of 1 to 10. How much glad do you feel right now, or say over the last week? And putting a number to each one of these is a way of doing a real powerful inventory. It's a liberating naming experience that helps us know what's going on with us. So once our trainees learn how to name these feelings, we go into understanding, well, how do we create the feelings? We're used to thinking, well, these, especially as guys, that these emotions just sort of happen. Somebody pulls out in front of me in traffic and cuts me off, and I'm angry. Well, they're driving stupid, and I'm mad, and it makes sense. A way of kind of slowing it down and understand the process is to understand there is a experience or a stimulus. Something takes place, something happens, and in a nanosecond we evaluate what's happening. We tell ourselves a story, and that story creates an emotion, or emotions, multiple. Now the thing is, over time, excuse me, the story we tell ourselves sometimes we can vary a story. Like a few weeks ago, heard a siren, and I thought, oh no, something's happened. It's a fire or whatever. And I go out, look out the window. I'm afraid. See, you're a little nervous and concerned. And I say, well, no, it's a parade. And so fear changed to glad. Afraid changed to glad, just because I could restory it by gathering new information from that stimulus, that experience. Now, over time, our stories become narratives. They're harder to talk ourselves out of. They're more of the same experience, evaluation, emotion. Obviously, many times I've had the experience of a siren, and I've come out and found out, well, yeah, it's an emergency vehicle. So it's become more of a narrative and an expected sort of a feeling of afraid. And in time, narratives become beliefs. They're like, they're just self-evident truths that we really don't check that closely. Or if we do, we'll look for the part of the experience that reinforces the belief. So a way of thinking, like now during this pandemic, we're forming all kind of narratives and beliefs about ourselves. I call them psychological tattoos. There's a way of thinking that one of the stories, that the second arrow story that I've heard told, is like the first arrow that hits us is that I'm alone and isolated. I'm not connected with people as I've been before, and that feels awful. That feels sad. And then the second arrow is, yeah, that's going on, and I'm the only one that is happening to. There's something about me that I'm the only one isolated, and that makes me, on top of that, feel ashamed. And so through that kind of inner dialogue, we're doing some things. We're creating psychological tattoos that are not only not real or not based in objective reality, but they're also not fair to us. And so, again, the importance of understanding, what's the experience that's given rise to the feeling? What's the story that we're telling ourselves? Or is it a story? Is it a narrative? Or is it a belief that's going on? And understanding and differentiating between those is what will help us to be able to know how to best deal with it. So once we've developed this feeling, what happens to it? A way of thinking about this is that feelings and emotions are just neurochemical energy, and they, like electricity, follow a certain path on a circuit. And in this case, in the case of feelings, they need to either be put into expression or can be used to motivate us to take action. Like, you see people get angry and they'll throw something. That's motivated action. It kind of gets it out. But if it's something valuable, or if it hurts them or someone else, it's probably not a good motivated action. Expression is just about naming. Again, the liberation of calling out and naming what's going on is a very, very powerful experience. And can help to facilitate the expression of that emotion. Now, if we don't put it into either expression or motivated action, it goes into the cauldron and it builds up. And that's some of the stuff that goes on during surge depletion. If you're not caring for yourself emotionally and tapping into what emotions you're experiencing and what's creating them and expressing them, putting them into some outward fashion of either action or expression, they go into what I call the cauldron, the cauldron of unexpressed emotion. And here, the stuff builds up. And once it's full, any emotion coming down the pipe drops in like a drop of water in a full cup of coffee, and it spills out, or somebody bumps into it, it splashes out all over them. And when the cauldron's full, we don't have the capacity for additional emotion, and it may come up in ways that, like too much sad would be depression, too much mad can be depression or explosiveness, too much fear becomes anxiety, that sort of thing. And when it goes into the cauldron again, it can become that element in the stress wagon that it's the last straw that breaks the camel's back, so to speak. So, just sort of in the world of method, motive, opportunity, the how to do it, the method part here is develop a 5 feeling check-in as a daily habit. Check in with yourself, with someone else. Hold space for each other to do this. Look at what kind of stories you're telling yourself, and which of these stories are limiting. Which of these might bear maybe some additional clarification of the data, the experience. And then next, how do you find ways to put the emotion into healthy expression and action? That may be connection with people in safe ways. It may be some sorts of action that may also be helpful to you health-wise, like certain kinds of working out, yoga, etc. And most importantly, a daily inventory of to see what might be in this cauldron, what might have slipped through, and then empty it. Find ways to empty it. So we think that is this first part of monitoring, managing these resources and states of being, so that we don't completely surge, that our energy isn't tapped in these ways, and that we sort of parcel it out into terms of what's the crystal in our lives. And so the second part is is restoring. When the depletion, surge capacity depletion phenomenon happens in part because we've depleted ourselves, but also because we have not restored ourselves. This is the resilient part of it. Just as sometimes touching our emotion might be the fragile part, it requires vulnerability, being fragile and saying, yeah, I got these feelings going on. The resilient part comes in learning how we restore our energy. Um, Yoga is one of the coolest things I discovered as a man with, oops, I lost my screen. Here we go. So yoga, and for a person with ADHD, I think it's just an extraordinary way of dealing. It does a whole lot of things. And I used to go like 2 or 3 nights a week to a yoga class. And well, we're not doing that yoga class anymore. All the kind of breathing and the sort of stuff that we do in a close quarter space would just be a immediate super spreader event. So I do it at home now, and people find that doing yoga is, either just your own program that you learn from through doing it, or you can go on YouTube or Gaia or any number of many different channels on TV and do this in your living room. And some people like to do it with cats. Pam does. So in other words, this is something that in the pandemic, I can't go out and do it like I used to at the gym, but I can do it at home. And there's other sorts of working out that I could do. And think of whatever workout regimen you've had. There's ways of accommodating that in whatever space you find yourself. It's harder now, and it's more important now as well. Meditation was something that I came across years ago that I found was also very helpful in for ADHD. And there's sort of a caveat for people for ADHD. Classical meditation is hard. I would sit down and start doing some, focus on, close my eyes and focus on my breathing, and eventually something would drag me away, and they say, well, just bring yourself back to your breathing. Well, for me, the distractibility of ADHD had me just all day long bringing myself back to my breathing, and it just didn't work as well. Guided meditation, on the other hand, is fascinating how effective that can be with ADHD. They're having music and sound and voice and direction and structure helps me to drop into a very deep state. And I've had other people with ADHD describe that same sort of experience. So again, finding ways to restore yourself that involve accommodating something that you've discovered that works for you before. Accommodating it now in the pandemic is not just a good idea. It's almost necessary to the point of mandatory. And when you can accommodate, when it's not possible to accommodate, it just means that you're going to need to find something else to do. You're going to need to seek other things that maybe you haven't tried before, or connections and grouping that have that are now virtual instead of in person, or that you find creative ways of connecting with people in safe ways. I know for my part, one of my projects was I built a gazebo a covered gazebo in our yard where people could sit outside in the open air at a socially safe distance, and maybe enjoy a meal or a conversation, or so thinking of ways to accommodate for what's facing us. We can't choose the music, but we can choose how we dance. Is sort of the way I think about what's been handed to us in the pandemic. And more specifics on this, intentional and safe are two adjectives that I throw out here. We could spontaneously connect with people and ourselves and activities before. Now we need to do it with intention and safety. Most any organization now has some virtual way of connecting. I'd heard about meetup.com for many years and recommended it to people. Started off, for those of you who've heard of it or haven't, it started off as a way that skaters would meet up and get word to each other about different meetups where they'd skate together, and it just grew to encompass every imaginable activity you can think of. And I've found several things on meetup.com that connect for me personally. A way of thinking, we think about this time now. I'm not going to say opportunity because that's that sounds, I just can't, it's hard to get my head around this being an opportunity, more so than it is a major blow to us in so many ways. But if we think of the silver lining part of this cloud, and think of this as the opportunity to discover deeper passions and meaning and possibilities in your life, because we need to get a bigger bang for the buck of what we can do. This is an opportunity then for you to discover some things about yourself that you haven't before. The thing of meditation may provide just that. There's I've listed these two people, Tara Brach and Jack Kornfield. Especially Tara Brach has some types of meditation that help us to understand some of our old patterns, our old wounds, or traumas, even in ways that we can learn how to care for ourselves and view in different ways. Necessity is the mother of invention. We're needing to do some of this stuff by ourselves now. And so this offers an opportunity for it. Down here, we put some of the guided meditation websites that or apps rather that I've found that are very effective. Actually, I have 3 of the 4 of these. They're all very good. So again, monitor and manage our resources and condition of our life, and then learn to restore ourselves in new and unique ways. Now, even when we do this, you do a good job of this. Those of us with ADHD, we're challenged in lots of ways to do all the things I've spoken about. And probably chief among those is that as we now have a vaccine, as more first line and now second line vaccines are soon to come on board, we're beginning to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And it's easy to say, oh, wow, this is the end is in sight. Now we're at the middle, looking toward the end, and the ends may seem a lot closer to us because, well, we're optimistic, we're hopeful, we always want to see the upside of things. And in that state of hopefulness, it would be real easy to try to surge again, and in ways that would overrun our capacity and our ability to restore our energy. A way of thinking is to do that is like trying to sprint a marathon at this point. So right now is the time where it's important as ever, and maybe even more so, to be mindful of managing and restoring ourselves. So thrown out a bunch of terms that we use in our training that hopefully make sense to you now, and that I'm not going to give you a test, but hopefully this is sort of like it's become almost second nature to you and your understanding of it, and can help guide you in sort of conversations with yourself and others that around how to deal with surge capacity depletion. And I think we have access to handouts or even a video of recording of this presentation. Also, let me do hawk my book here for a moment. The chapters 11 through 14 in Thriving at the Edge of Chaos has a more in-depth information about what I've spoken about tonight. Also, we've got some, like Brene Brown, I referenced her TED Talk. If you haven't heard this before, I strongly recommend it. It's like 14-minute TED Talk, and it has tremendous capacity to provide you a lot of life-changing zeal at this point in the pandemic. Here's some other Tara Brock and meetup.com connections as well, and also I'm doing starting a weekly podcast here in the coming weeks that will offer other ways of thinking about how you can restore yourself, monitor, manage all the things we spoke about tonight, and additional concepts as well. So this is the end of this is what I have for you, and thank you for attending and your attention, and I'm now be happy to answer some questions, if any questions you may have. And additionally, there's one other resource I want to put on the chat for you. There's I mentioned, I can do this. I mentioned meditation, yoga. There's also some breath work that I've gotten into, that I've discovered. My son is studying yoga to be an instructor, and breath work. And there's you may have heard of, there's a fellow by the name of Wim Hof, a very German name, Wim Hof breathing techniques. Something you can Google. It's a 15-minute process that is very powerful, very, very, very effective. It's excellent for pulling us out of our depths of moods, anxiety, depression, and helpful in any of a number of ways that just go ahead and read, and you'll experience, and as you experience it yourself, will discover the usefulness of it.